Hey guys, and welcome to a new recent viewing episode. And this is actually for a movie I probably watched like 2 weeks ago. As usual, I fell into the same old pit that I normally do. Sometimes I watch a movie and I really want to talk about it right afterwards, but maybe it's late at night, or maybe there's just something else that I really want to do right afterwards. And I say, well, I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes a week, and in this case, becomes almost 2 weeks. But I feel like that kind of cheats on how much I love this movie that I watched. That I didn't sit down and talk about it immediately because I thought it was awesome. The movie is called He Never Died, and it stars Henry Rollins. And if you don't know who Henry Rollins is, in my opinion, a pioneer of punk music from like back in the 80s. He's the lead singer of Black Flag, which I've always considered to be in like the upper echelon of punk music. Now, I'm not a punk music connoisseur or guru of any kind. There's just a few bands here and there that I really enjoyed, but Black Flag was always high up there in a lot of the lists that I would hear about. And they always had songs on punk compilations. And I have one of their albums, Who's Got the 10.5, and I think it's amazing, hilarious. I mean, it's all the things I could ever imagine from what I consider to be true punk. Now, in later years, Henry Rollins would have other groups that he was attached to, in particular Rollins Band. They were around and big in the 90s, did such songs as Liar and Disconnect. Couple of my favorite songs off of the album. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. And I'm sure he was involved in other musical groups and whatnot. He also, Henry Rollins himself, had a spoken word tour thing that he did, and he's probably done it many times, but I actually got to see it in the late 90s in Montana. I went to a show where Henry Rollins was just talking about his thoughts on music and politics and religion and like everything that you could imagine. And by this point, he had already started acting and stuff too. Most notably to me is Johnny Mnemonic, but he was here and there in a lot of other movies. And then I don't know what his filmography for the last 10 years or so is, but this movie came along. Now this is the movie itself. And as I have mentioned in the pickups video where I showed this off, this is a DVD. This isn't a Blu-ray. I don't buy DVDs anymore unless it's something that's so cheap and especially is not available on Blu-ray, such as this, that I just have to get it. So I got this movie after I watched it because I rented it on Vudu. But it was a few weeks before I rented it that I first stumbled across what this was. And I decided I would read the synopsis on the back of this to kind of give an idea of what it's about, but also what my first impression was, and then when I actually watched the movie. Anyway, it says, sink your teeth into this bloody gore fest about an immortal cannibal that can't seem to stay away from his favorite dish, humans. Jack, which is Henry Rollins' character, has been around, well, forever. After centuries of living, he struggles to keep a low profile and limit his human flesh eating to a minimum, substituting lab blood and the occasional rat. All this changes when gangsters try to kill him, and a previously unknown teenage daughter shows up at his doorstep. When she's kidnapped, Jack goes ballistic, ignoring bullets to the brain and ice picks to his neck. Nothing can stop him as he battles his way through the baddest gang in Brooklyn. Now that's essentially the first thing I read about it, and what I want to focus on is where it says Immortal Cannibal. But I also want to show the picture on here where you see the wings, and the picture on the back where you see where there might have been wings and then they were cut. I totally went into the movie with those words Immortal Cannibal in my brain. Okay, he's a cannibal, he consumes flesh and drinks blood of humans, and he's immortal, so he won't die. Now, the synopsis on the back of that glosses over a few parts. The main reason why these gangsters come after him is because I guess maybe I should preface this once more with a spoiler alert. I've already mentioned I just really love this movie, and I think anybody should just sit down and watch it, as long as you don't mind some graphic stuff like blood and violence and some language. But now I want to get into a little bit of the elements of the story, so spoiler alert after this. So the reason why he gets attacked by gangsters and these criminals is because there's this guy, I don't know if he was a med student or an intern or, going to school, and he was just working in a hospital for whatever reason due to his schooling. He is sort of Jack's hookup for blood, maybe even some flesh. Definitely the blood part, though. The bags that he would get from this guy looked like he'd been to the butcher and got a bunch of meat, but then one time he opens one up and it was just blood bags. But this kid was getting ready to finish up whatever it was he was doing, where his commitment or whatever to working at the hospital was about to run out, and he was trying to tell Jack that he would have to find somebody new to help him out. Well, the kid had borrowed some money. It happens a lot in these kind of movies. Some naive kid borrows money from gangsters and has to pay it back with interest and can't afford to, doesn't have the money, so they come after him. Well, that's what involves Jack with him. Jack knows that this was his hookup, and maybe in the back of his mind there's just this little bit of compassion for him, which is important to think about, and I'll get to that here in a second. But Jack is supposed to meet up with the kid one last time, and the kid is gone. In fact, I think he witnesses the kid get grabbed when he was going to come get blood from him. And so he pursues these guys with this kid, and they're torturing the kid. And he comes in, and he just fucking goes all Liam Neeson Taken style on these guys. Like he's got a particular set of skills. And he deals with these guys pretty bad. Like, he doesn't kill them. I think maybe he kills one of them. There was 3 or 4 of them. But the ones who knew, or who got away, now they're pissed off at him because he fucked up their shit trying to get money from this kid, and somebody came in there and saved him. And that's what starts his pursuit of these guys on Jack's character. All around the same time, he gets this call from his ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend. I guess it was an ex-girlfriend, because he explains later in the movie that she and he were only together for about a month. But that month produced a child, a daughter that he didn't know anything about, a daughter who's now late teens or early 20s, and for some reason or another, both she and the ex, the girl's mom, decide that maybe she should get to know her dad. So he gets a call that she left a bar and she was drunk and she was with some guy, and her mom's worried about her. Can you go help her out? This is your kid. And he reluctantly goes to pick her up and then lets her stay at his place for a couple of days. But, and this is what I mentioned before about that little sliver of compassion that he showed for the kid who was getting in blood all the time. Because of his cannibalism or whatever it is, his desire for blood and flesh and all this, and the fact that he's lived for ages and ages and ages, he resists that so that he's not just killing everybody, killing what he believes are innocent people who don't deserve to be destroyed just because of his unsatiable or insatiable hunger for blood and meat. So he distances himself from everybody. Friends, non-friends, loved ones. Probably the reason why his relationship with his daughter's mom was short-lived, because he couldn't be around somebody. I could even go for the gross out factor of maybe he didn't want to be around a female who bleeds once a month. That would probably drive him crazy. So that's why he didn't even realize he had a kid. And then when the kid showed up, and these gangsters show up, and he has all these issues, and he can't just focus on what he does. This is a guy, he goes to a church goes to a bingo around older people because they don't stimulate his taste buds like younger people would. He does all these things to try to distract himself, and he has no personal relationships, no real friendships, no love interests in forever. And then all of a sudden, all this shit is just dumped on his lap, and he's kind of pulled back into it. Not only is he doing all these things for people because there is some sliver of compassion for him, he just has to bury it so that he doesn't kill people. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Anyway, this is now all dumped right back in his lap, and he gets pulled back into the life. Now, he kills some people in the course of this movie to take care of business, like he believes that he has to, but he justifies it by the fact that they are bad guys. They're these gangsters. They're not good, normal, regular people. He resists. He has his moments where he even wants to eat his freaking kid. And this waitress at this little diner that he goes to, who gets pulled into it wrongly, he actually ends up revealing what is going on with him to her, and she can't really understand it. Now, this was something I wanted to touch on in this because, as I said, the synopsis on the movie and online for the movie said immortal cannibal. But when he's talking to this lady, she's gears are going in her head, and she was like, so does that make you, are you like a vampire? And he's like, well, essentially. And I don't know if the movie was trying to be tongue-in-cheek and not, like they were trying to say, well, not in that cheesy I sparkle in the sun kind of thing. I like to keep it to myself. Or if it was just a, yeah, I'm a vampire, but I don't want it getting out. I don't know. Like I said, all this stuff said cannibal. Then they touch on vampirism in the movie. But then at another point, he's talking to her, and she's like, so what are you, like 150, 200 years old? And he's like, oh, no, much older than that. She's like, really? How old? And he's like, well, I'm in the Bible. And she's just kind of like stunned. And he himself decides to push forward and try to explain it a little bit more. And he's like, yeah, my name is Kane, or that's how it's pronounced, but a lot of people pronounce it differently, which in my opinion meant they pronounced it Kane, as in Cain and Abel, as in one of the original kids of Adam and Eve. So the wings and all that kind of stuff, the whole thing of a cannibal to a vampire to now all of a sudden he's like one of the original human beings, and they gave it sort of an angelic thing and a heaven and hell thing, and I was like, maybe my one complaint about the movie was it just seemed inconsistent. And maybe it's just because I'm reading too much into this immortal cannibal thing. Because it's just that I don't know, or I don't understand. Maybe, like I said, maybe this is a religious thing that I just don't know about. But why would this guy, if he was an original human, if maybe at some point he was angelic in some manner, why would he eat flesh and drink blood and all that kind of stuff? I don't know. If somebody can explain that one to me, that'd be great. But that's the only flaw that I had with it, and it may not even be a flaw. It may just be a matter of me being ignorant to some of the source material that this movie may be borrowing from. But aside from that, I really, really enjoyed it. Now, this is the kind of movie that if they wanted to do some sort of a sequel, I think this Jack character could be a 2 or 3 movie character. In the same way like John Wick, is going to have a sequel. Why not? But I know from the Facebook page that surrounded this movie, and kind of like the reason why I have a DVD and not a Blu-ray is because they weren't going to release a Blu-ray. It had a very, what I would call a grassroots thing about it. Like on the Facebook page, when I guess it was getting its release in theaters, I'm trying to think of the not a wide release, but like a whatever. I think you understand what I'm saying. A limited release. That's the word I'm trying to grasp. When it got its limited release in theaters, the Facebook page and Twitter pages and stuff were like, go see it, share it, tell people about it. Because they weren't going to get a big advertising budget. They were only going to get a DVD release. digital release. If it does ever get a Blu-ray release, I'll buy it in a heartbeat. And I would definitely recommend this movie. If any of what I've talked about sounds like... the only people I wouldn't recommend this movie to would be anybody who would just have a problem with the violence, the language, the blood, and all that kind of content. But otherwise, this is a great movie, kind of an underrated title. It's going to go under the radar for a lot of people. If I had an opportunity to sit back and think about all the movies I saw in 2015 that I watched in 2015 that were 2015 releases, this would be in my top 10 for sure, along with stuff like Star Wars The Force Awakens. It would definitely sit atop my top 10 list. And that might be a thought. I might go back over the movies I bought last year that I actually watched and maybe come up with a top 10 list. Maybe. Just a thought. But anyway, that's my thoughts on He Never Died, starring Henry Rollins. Loved it. Loved all the other actors who are in it. Great. Great in all ways. I just can't recommend it enough. So happy that I stumbled across it and was able to pick it up. So thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.